doing great.
Blair, I got to come right out and ask you, why do you hate being asked the question why?
Wow. Well, Mike, just right straight to the heart here. I have spent, well, I've been working in working helping people for 48 years. So I love what I do. I had a school called Life Skills Colleges for 35 years. And the college had 80% of its students, we had over 1,000 students at life skills colleges, and 80% of them were potentially suicidal. Our job was to work with these individuals and in 4 months get them more or less, quote unquote, employment ready and or education ready. These are people that were not employable prior to us, and nobody else, no other agency wanted to deal with them. We got them. We had a 76.2% success rate, and my passion grew to despise what's because most of our clients were in counseling, traditional counseling. I'm not poo-pooing traditional counseling. Don't get me wrong here. But so many counselors ask why. And Simon Sinek did this whole thing on you got to know your why. And frankly, it's probably the single most destructive thing I've seen, especially in business, but with people in general, because whys hold you stuck. Whys require you to go to the past. A true why, not a disguised why. And I did 6.5 years of research around question concepts. So I think I know a thing or two about what I do. And nobody in the history of the world has done the research that I have done. And I've had it checked out by many people and one academic in particular, Dr. David Redekop, who reviewed my work because his dissertation was on all known forms of psychology, both Eastern and Western, and a 5,000 page dissertation on that. And he said, Blair, I've never come across this in totality before anywhere in psychology. So it's rare, but it is a unique piece. I have figured out that people who get hooked up in their why, they come in and unfortunately they tell stories and they say something like this: I feel that, or I feel like, and then there's a story afterwards. I feel like, and usually it's pointing a finger at somebody else. I feel like you are doing stuff to me that is holding me back and keeping me stuck. Or I feel that you're being ineffective in my life, or you are beating me up, or you are abusing me, or you are. Okay. As opposed to, I feel this is a what feeling now. I feel frustrated. That's what I'm feeling when you do this behavior. And when you comment on me and I'm unclear as to what you're meaning, I don't know how to take that. Could you please be more specific rather than holding me in this general statement? Is that reasonable to you? All of a sudden, that I am frustrated, I am mad, I am angry are all the statements that I'm owning. And the frustration and the mad and the angry and whatever else, or I really appreciate it when you look at me and tell me, well, I'm referring to my girlfriend right now, and tell me that you love me rather than just looking over the shoulder and saying, love you, and out the door. Like, I don't feel loved at that moment. So all of a sudden, clarity starts happening. And that's what causes me to get frustrated with whys and people with whys, because whys generate reasons, excuses, rationalizations, and justifications 100% of the time. They are 100% past based. Can I ask you a question? Mike, can I ask you a question?
Feel
Great.
free.
Great. Thank you. Can you change your past?
Well, the past you can't change. However, you don't have to remain stuck there. You can learn
Perfect.
from it and you can shift it and you can change from it.
Agreed. But that means where do you have to be in order to learn from it, shift it, and change it? Where do you have to be? Past, present, or future?
You got to be present.
Bingo. Now, the trick question here is, can you change your future?
Well, the trick question behind that is the fact the future's not here yet. So you still got the
Bingo.
opportunity to craft the environment along the trail that you're walking toward that future.
Awesome. Awesome. And I don't know about you. I've done, like, I may not look like it. I'm all dressed up, and this is where I live. This is my living room and whatnot, where I live. Um, but as a younger man, I spent a fair amount of time out with, Aboriginal natives, on reserves up north, being on the land, um, learning about medicine, the medicine wheel, learning about lots of different things, and recognizing that it's always about being present. And you can bushwhack your way to cut a new path for your life, but you can't bushwhack your way back to your past and change it because it doesn't exist anymore. There's nothing you can do about it except feel frustrated, bad, angry, sad, happy, glad. All the emotions are there, but we can't change them. They are what they are. So that's how come I am so frustrated with people who tell me, you got to find your why and your big why, which is usually the question they're actually asking is, what's your big purpose?
I think it's big purpose and motivation.
Bingo.
And those are two things that each one of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we step away from all the distractions or all the different pillars that people put along our trail.
Yeah,
And we stop using all those things as excuses. We start taking accountability for where we're at. We look at
absolutely.
we look at the trail that's already been blazed and we realize that without that trail, whatever it is we think is coming down the road is impossible to get to because you
Mhm.
haven't built in the mechanisms and you haven't learned the lessons yet.
Yeah.
And those are the important things. And I think a lot of us get caught up in when we try to be present, we get caught up in the shame of where we've been. We want to bounce that responsibility of the learning curve off to whatever the circumstance may have been.
Hmm. Absolutely true. That's how come I've spent the vast majority of my life working with people and helping people understand where they are, how they are, and asking questions of them so that they can explore their inner path and discover the two yous that are inside of yourself. Everybody has them. Everybody has, like, some people refer to it as the good angel and the dark angel, on their shoulders, the good guy, the bad guy. It's always this duality. And I go, yeah, those are two selves that we have. But how do we marry those in such a way that the negative one does not pull us under and that we can strengthen the positive one on a consistent basis? And that's where the mind models I created kick in. And that was where I spent over 17 years researching at life skills colleges. And a lot of our Um, a lot of our coaches that we trained up were First Nations people. And that was critical because they were one of the, and still are, one of the biggest, uh, most classically misrepresented, misguided, and even partially ignored class of people with huge value, huge knowledge, huge understanding of the world and how it is in a world that didn't value that. But how do you give them the coping skills, the problem solving skills, and the success skills to move forward? And that's really what we did at life skills colleges. And I went on to doing with, you know, the mind models, the Blair Dunkley experience that I share every Tuesday night on YouTube. So I want to have that so people have a way of capturing information, because most places, most schools and colleges teach you what to think and what to believe, and in some cases, sort of what to do. But mind models are all practical models for how we think. And so that you can take how to think anywhere, absolutely everywhere, and ask simple questions like, what's effective? What are you doing that's effective or ineffective? And if you do that, you get away from judgment, especially self-judgment.
See, and I think those judgments, especially the self-judgment, really, when you come to that table, they're rooted within fear because there's, that fear holds you back from the understanding.
Yep,
You want to destroy all that you don't understand because where you're sitting in that fear is comfortable. And if you're going to really step outside of the distractions, you're really going to start to hone in on who you are and how you're going to convey that purpose and make it a part of the greater good.
absolutely.
It takes not only a will inside to push past that fear, but it takes sometimes sitting down at a table with somebody that has different values, different understandings, and seeing how you can incorporate the two together. I mean, when I think about the beginning of my project, it was a self-discovery journey that brought it together. And where it began to deepen and build with the spiritual connection and all these different things, I didn't know anything about where I was sticking my toes, but I
Yep,
did out of that motivation in my heart to step out of the fear, find the understanding. And it's grown so much, not only within the fabric of my work, but within
mhm,
me as a person. And it's expressed that greater purpose and that ability to rely on myself and all these things that in our society we look at as like a brass spring, but we're never able to truly let go of the anchor in order to reach it. And that's what I hope these sort of projects really motivate somebody to do, is to slip their toes out of that cuff and be able to start to bring themselves up to reach those brass rings.
exactly. And that's the whole point of, I mean, when you're dealing with people who are potentially suicidal, they're in the deepest pits of despair, and working through processes and asking simple, basic
Well,
questions.
hang on one second though, because of the subject where we're going now. I want to stop you and
Okay.
actually from first person perspective, there's an important thing to really understand is the fact that that person that's in those shoes, they're
Yes.
not necessarily looking for that easy way out. They're
No, they're not.
actually they're actually experiencing a breakdown of their coping skills. And it is the most fundamental and animalistic aspect of self-soothing that is driving that urge and that desire and those plans and everything else. And if you can sit down and get out of that fear of the fact that you, as the helper, at any given moment could find yourself in those shoes, then you're able to start building a conversation that
Yep,
gets them through just a couple of minutes where you can start to incorporate and employ processes like this.
exactly. I mean, a little bit of background about myself. I've been um, at very dark places in my life. And one of the darkest moments was my father went in for open heart surgery. And 15 minutes before he was going to be released from the uh, the um, intensive care ward, for some reason he stopped breathing and he slipped into a coma. And he was in a coma for 14 years before he passed. And the doctors actually induced the coma because he was fighting intubation to keep him breathing and keep him alive. So they put him into the coma, which he never came out of. And the doctors told my family and myself that my dad had a 99% chance of never coming out of a coma, which he never did. And that was horrific. And I had students at the college who were potentially suicidal. And that night I went home and I took a shower and I broke down just in a horrific, like body shaking, convulsive crying where I could not stop myself from shaking and crying. And I recalled the water, running down on me. And I reached up, turned off the shower, and crawled out and pulled a towel on myself. I went through the process of trying to figure that out. But over time, it gave me, because I was at the college and I had what I had, and I had the students there around me, I could test some of my ideas. I could ask their support. I could hear how they were stuck in their moments and how they needed to pivot and move away from where it was. And that's what you've described right there. And in that 2 to 3 minutes of being understood, because that's really what people want, is they don't need to be told how to fix it. They need to have somebody understand their pain and understand that it's possible, not guaranteed, but possible to possibly move beyond where they are. And in that moment, they can pivot and move from hopeless to possibly seeing hope. And I want to stress, it's just the slimmest crack of possible light to see. And I've experienced that multiple times in my life. And I'm going out on suicide runs, um, emergency interventions. You would go out there and you'd hear what's going on, but building that brief moment of credible relationship with that person. And usually just by hearing them share their story, their pain, and then finding a story, a part of it that you can show that it's possible for them to pivot where they didn't see any possibility before. That's the crack that I'm talking about. It's the slimmest of cracks, but it's what's there, it's what's needed. So I think we're on the same page around that.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think, really, regardless of where you find yourself sitting at the table or at the fire in one of those situations,
Yeah.
understanding that each of us has this beautiful power within our hearts to just open up and just offer an ear. We don't
Yeah.
have to put judgment. We don't have to put ourselves in that seat of fear because in the back of our head, we're thinking that could be us anytime. We can just do.
Yeah.
I think really fundamentally getting into one of those situations and having one of those conversations truly helps you to work toward removing that story of self-suffering that each of us carry. It's something that really truly changes your perspective on things.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I wound up doing was recognizing what was holding me stuck was reliving my story over and over again. And when I stumbled across this construct, which became a mind model of remembering versus reliving, and I learned that I don't have to relive, but I don't have to forget either. I can just remember. And when I hold it as a memory, it doesn't impact me and I don't go down the drain with it. I don't get sucked into the vortex of despair. I can recall that I was in despair, not having to go back into despair. And that recognizing the why of the story or the what I felt. And that's the difference between why emotions and what emotions. Why emotions always have the story. And you require this is why I feel horrible. This is and the story is told yet again. But what I felt was despair. And when you state it that clearly, and you know that that's what you felt, you don't have to relive the story. You can remember the story. Then you can ask yourself, what might I do differently now? And possibilities may happen.
I really think looking back on this conversation specifically, we're talking really about the vocabulary that we
Yes,
utilize because
yes,
you've got the victim mentality vocabulary that allows you to look down on yourself while putting the blame and the responsibility on everybody else. But
yes,
then you've also got the hero vocabulary, the hero's journey where we go through the adversities, we go through the struggles, and then we look back at that and how we can improve, how we can change the path that we're about to start walking. And when you start with
mm,
something as simple as one single word, shifting that why to what is a beautiful place to start with that.
it is. It's huge. Makes all the difference. And, I train facilitators and coaches in my methodology called mind models. So, mind model method coach training also help people overcome fears, phobias, and anxieties. And that can be done very quickly by non-traditional psychological approaches. In fact, I sort of put psychology slightly to the side. And what I do is I focus on neuroscience. And the neuroscience of this states very clearly what fires together wires together. And when you experience something new, you've just fired together a sequence of things, and that wires together a memory of what it is. Now, you can either recall and relive the situation and with the full embodiment of all the emotions. If I tell you and I think about my father and the coma and all, I will cry, and that is reliving it. Or I can choose to remember it. And I choose the memory because it does not leave me debilitated for now it's just a few hours. Before it was days and weeks. And that's different. So I shift myself. I'm in charge of myself. So I can choose I want to what? I want to name and label what I felt, describe that feeling, and live to that purpose.
It brings to mind actually one of the words in my vocabulary that I worked to change a lot very early on was taking the idea of a memory and looking at it either positively or negatively, and shifting that into a celebration. So the
Mhm.
framework around that is instead of, oh, I experienced this horrible event or this or that, you look at it in the celebration within the lens of what it is that you learned or what it was
Okay.
that you were able to experience within
Perfect.
that event. As we come toward the end of our time, though, you got to let people know how they can get in touch with you, work with you, what you got going on, all the good selfless plugging stuff.
Okay. Well, hey, I do a free thing. It's called the Blair Dunkley Experience. It's on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and just type in the Blair Dunkley Experience, you can find me. I do a thing every Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. And people, like I have, people that jump on the call, they can join on a Zoom link and be part of the group experience that is there. I have a book out on Amazon. It's called Ultimate Mind Hacking. And for your listeners, I have a free gift that I am more than willing to share. And it's all about what I refer to as the three E's. And so the three E's, um, you know, gives people a, the three E's are all about the effective versus ineffective mind model. Then the second mind model of these three E's is external versus internal. And the last one is evaluation versus judgment. And it teaches people how to use effective, external, and evaluation in their life so they can stop self-judging. They can stop beating up on themselves, that they go internal and just dump all over themselves, and that they can stop going right, wrong, good or bad, which is all judgment language, and go to, oh, what's effective? What's ineffective? And recognize how that empowers them so subtly and so effectively. Anyway, it's just that's the free gift. You can pull that out of our chat and give that to anybody who watches this. It's free. And it's got an hour and 20-minute masterclass to boot on the threes so people can quite literally apply it, see some of my students and how they've applied it in their life. And if you like that and want more, hey, hit me up on blairdunkley.com. And there's all kinds of stuff there. And it's just simply there we go, blairdunkley.com. And that's
Awesome.
about it.
I'll
Yeah.
link to that in the show notes for sure. Blair, I want to thank you for taking the time to celebrate your journey and your experiences with me. I don't believe in the words goodbye, so until we meet again, whether it's in this life or the next, I
Yeah,
wish you a
really.
safe and prosperous journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much.